This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
To say we're living in unprecedented times feels like an understatement. As parents of adult children, we've had to navigate these murky waters of balancing our own mental health and the needs of our kids. I'll admit, we can't even begin to relate to what parents of younger kids are going through. Lockdowns, school closures, masks, and social distancing have stripped away the innocence of childhood. As a parent, how do you help your kids? Dr. Roseann Capanna-Hodge, a trailblazing psychologist and pediatric mental health expert, is here to talk about the long-term impacts of COVID and what we can do. Hi, Dr. Roseann.
Hi, Lucy. I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation. We need to be talking more about mental health and more about what people can do to improve their well-being.
And I think somehow I'm almost afraid that kids have been forgotten throughout all of this. I know what it's been like navigating our kids through this. They live in a different city from us. They go to college. And there's been some days where you're on the phone for an hour with them just because the weight of it all is carrying down. They're young men. This is when they should be out living their lives, not locked in their house like a prison cell. But I have a couple of young nieces and nephews, and I wonder what this is doing to them and what the long-term impact is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, Lucy, we know there's going to be more of an impact for some people. We know there are greater risk factors, or I should say there are risk factors that put you at greater risk for things like anxiety and depression, PTSD, stress, all of that, right? And then we know there are protective factors. There are actually factors that sort of inoculate you. But the reality is when we're looking at research right now, survey research from the United States, from Asia and Europe, and Asia and Europe, obviously ahead of us in the pandemic, what is it telling us? It's showing us that young adults and teenagers are reporting much higher rates of anxiety and depression. And one startling statistic that came out of this, Lucy, in the United States, if a teen or a young adult had a family member with COVID, they had a 50% risk of having moderate to severe depression. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think the stress related to that, I think the social isolation, I think just being scared and being all those feelings that come up. But we know kids are being impacted of all ages, right? Some kids are doing okay and some kids are struggling, but I think most kids are somewhere in between.
So
go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No. So, what we need to look at is, okay, so we know people are struggling. We know adults are struggling. In America, the Stress in America survey, and it shows us that 70% of parents are reporting significant stress due to the pandemic and homeschooling. Okay, that's not terribly shocking. Who was equipped? So what we really need to turn our attentions to is what can parents, what can young adults, what can people do to protect their own mental health and their kids' mental health? That's really the conversation we need to be having. And that's what, I've been talking about and is my platform for long before this pandemic. And my book, It's Going to Be Okay, dives into a lot of the things that can reduce and reverse mental health symptoms. And they're only natural therapies. But I think at this moment, Lucy, in the pandemic, the thing that every adult needs to do is put their own oxygen mask on. I think that we are forgetting how important self-care is. And it's not just self-care like, oh, I'm going to get my nails done, because you're not really going to get your nails done anyway. but really doing things to regulate our nervous system, get yourself into this healthy rhythm and stay positive. And when we do that, we show up as better human beings. We show up as better friends, partners, and parents. And we not only are better able to parent our kids, but our kids get to see, one, you value self-care and you value your own mental health. And two, they learn from you. They learn, wow, I should take care of myself too. And I think that's really where people need to start. And I can't, overemphasize how important that is.
So let's go back to self-care for parents,
Yes.
because, I'm just picturing mom, she's at home, and I've seen a lot of statistics coming out that women are really the ones that are bearing the brunt of this, because they're typically the ones that are staying at home with the kids. They are the ones doing the homeschooling. And I remember how hard it was with 2 kids at home working full time when I didn't have a pandemic. So
Yes.
like dealing with all of this is, beyond me. But as a mother at home with 2 kids, homeschooling, trying to work, trying to navigate all of this, what would be a couple of examples of self-care? Because I know it's something we talk about a lot on this podcast,
Yeah.
but it's still a misunderstood concept, I think.
So misunderstood. Thank you for clarifying. So first of all, if you're at home and you're overwhelmed, let's back it up. Let's make sure you're putting structure and routine into place. If you still haven't figured it out, maybe you're in and out of homeschooling. Maybe you're back at school, then you're back at home, right? You've got to have structure and routine in place with clear communication guidelines about your device, what you expect from school, because otherwise it's friction at home, right? That's a major, major thing. But what is self-care? We have this grand vision that it's a 2-hour massage, or getting your nails done, or going to the gym for 3 hours. Those are beautiful things to happen. But when we talk about the brain and body, right? I'm talking about the nervous system, and more specifically, the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system regulates your stress response. So it's in charge of determining and managing when a stressor happens. And a healthy nervous system, an autonomic nervous system, says, oh, look, my kid won't get off his device. I'm so irritated. Boom, you get irritated. It goes into the stress state, which is a sympathetic dominant. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to talk to him after I'm less irritated. And then it goes down into a relaxed parasympathetic state. Well, if you're in chronic stress mode, hello, at half the world, it's going to be more in this sympathetic dominant state. How do you turn that around? Well, that's self-care. So when we do things to regulate our nervous system, as little as 10 minutes a day, and the key is you've got to take those 10 minutes, Lucy, and you've got to do them every day. I don't care if you go sit in your car. You got to do it. So what are ways to regulate your nervous system that equates to self-care? Number 1, breath work. Okay. So we're all breathing. We may not be breathing in a way that regulates our nervous system. And you are 100% control of that autonomic function. And there's lots of wonderful types of breath, but all the breaths that regulate your nervous system are diaphragmatic breathing. They are what's called belly breathing. It's when you're filling your belly up with air, and ideally you're focusing on a long exhalation. My number 1 favorite breath is a 4-7-8. So you're breathing in for 4 seconds, you're holding for 7, and then you're doing a longer exhalation for 8. Now, you can do star breathing, in and out, where you're going, on a star. If you're a kid, you can teach your kid how to do bubble breathing, right? There's so many different kinds of breath. I don't want to exclude it, but the key is you have to fill up your belly like a balloon and then focus on a longer exhalation, because that's going to regulate your nervous system. So breath work, amazing tool. It only works if you actually set aside the time and do it, right? So put it on your watch, do it before you get out of bed, do it every night, do it at lunch. Gratitude journaling, right? So really doing gratitude journaling or prayer. Doing yoga, biofeedback, easy, inexpensive, super, super effective. There's a long list of other things that really help you, but I really like to focus on things that are simple and accessible. And don't forget meditation. Meditation, clinically proven, after 10 minutes or more a day for 40 straight days, changes brainwave functioning and reduces anxiety and depression and improves focus. Okay. These are all things we're struggling with right now. And, this is super important that we take this time. So it doesn't have to be 30 minutes, it has to be 10 or more. And who can't give 10 minutes? Okay. I have moms with 10 kids doing this. Okay. If a mom with 10 kids can do this, you can do it. So I don't mean to make light of it. I like to laugh about serious topics because otherwise we're all going to be crying. This is hard on everybody. I don't know any parent that is not feeling the weight of this pandemic as a parent and for themselves and what is the disruption of their own lives. But the worry of the loss for your kids, that there's so much disappointment for them, And so that's really important. That's what self-care is, Lucy.
Yeah, and that's such great information. And I wish the mom of me when I had little kids understood that, because it would have made the world a difference. I now have all of those practices in my life. I start my day with journaling, with meditation, with yoga. I have that time to spend on myself. I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
I don't recommend it.
Don't we all? I mean, I'm the mom of two kids with special needs, and my oldest, who's 16, went through very, very hard times. I won't use profanities here, but just things you would never wish on your worst enemy, having Lyme disease and PANS and PANDAS. And, until I realized this was a long-term problem, I treated everything like it was a sprint. And I kept thinking every solution to his mental health and physical problems was going to be it. And so we have to treat everything like it's a marathon, and we have to treat ourselves like we're a Ferrari. Okay. Because mothers, no offense, dads, we're the captains of the ship. And when we go down, the ship is going down, and so we've got to take care of ourselves and give up the guilt. Right. And that's why I say 10 minutes a day. Nobody's going to feel guilty about 10 minutes a day. Hide yourself away from the kids, whatever age they are, your darn cat or dog, your partner, and do it. You know what I mean? If you have to get up early to do it, or go to bed later, or leave, your desk, wherever that is, in the middle of the day, do it. You're going to be so much better off for it.
It does. And the breathing technique, I use it.
Yes.
Throughout the day. And I'm probably going to get the term wrong, but the deep breathing, the 4-7-8 that you talked about, does that not activate I want to call it the vagus nerve?
Oh, your vagus nerve, right?
Vagus nerve.
So yes, so your you got it. Your vagus.
You think I would remember Vegas,
your vagus nerve connects your gut to your brain. And most people don't realize that you have as much electrical activity in your gut as you do in your brain. It's shocking to people. And that's why we talk about, gut health and having, a happy gut and all of those things. It's really important. And that vagus nerve helps to there's a bidirectional influence between the two. And our vagus nerve is really important in regulating our stress response as well. But our autonomic nervous system is what determines when the troops are going out. Well, we got trouble here. Let's mobilize. Let's get everything, our hormones, our neurotransmitters, every resource you have in your body when there's a stressor, boom, thinks it's going to war. And if you're in a chronic stress state, what are the physical ramifications? And this happens to kids in the same exact way as it does to adults. You're going to look dysregulated, and it's going to show up as anything from internalizing to externalizing problems. So you could have anxiety and worry and agitation internally, or you can feel rage. You can feel that you can show outward irritation. You can have physical problems. I mean, anything can happen once the nervous system gets dysregulated, because the autonomic nervous system is not supposed to be stuck on. And, you know, we are not designed to live in overdrive, but yet, you know, the global culture is living a high stress lifestyle before the pandemic. Forget about it now. People are crumbling. Like people that
Yeah.
had it together, they're crumbling. I'm seeing people for the first time in their lives. Maybe they should have gone to counseling 20 years ago, going to counseling. Maybe they never needed counseling, going to counseling. I coined the term reentry panic syndrome in the early part of the pandemic when people were going back into the pandemic, because I saw people in my own personal life like flipping out, like just losing any sense of self-control, getting very emotional. And that's okay. As long as you're not rude to people, it's all okay. And you know, some people got help and some people didn't. They were so fear induced by the thought of entering the world and were so afraid of getting sick that they developed anxiety or depression or panic attacks. And I think that there are still people today, you know, as we're going in and out of this society, and parts of the world are re-entering at this point. You know, where I am in the suburbs of New York City, it was like the end of the world, Lucy, a year ago. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, people were dying left and right. I mean, you would drive back past places and they would have air conditioned units for bodies at nursing homes. I mean, that's the reality of what was happening, and how traumatic for everybody involved in so many levels. So we are facing hard times, but what I want people to know is this is why I say it's going to be okay. We can do things. And it really starts with that self-care, Lucy. I mean, it really, really does on so many levels, not just for yourself, but role modeling for your kids.
So let's just say, okay, we've got mom and dad taken care of. Mom and dad have their self-care routines. They're taking care of themselves. And how do they then translate that into helping their kids?
Yeah. So first of all, what I have always done, regardless of what age my kids, so I have a younger kid and I have a teenager, and I started this path for them. I've always been integrative and always took care of myself. So I started it when they were really young, but you can start at any point. It is saying, hey, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to do some breath work. I'm going to do some meditation. I need you to join me. Okay. And you don't want to ask a teenager, do you want to join me? You can say, hey, do you want to do this with me at 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock? That's the way to do it, right? You don't give them an option. You just say, you give them an option of time, not a yes and no, just a little parenting tip. Don't ask your kids, you do drugs. You say, when's the last time you did drugs? You know what I mean? Like you do that, you know, I'm like the Spanish Inquisition over here. So you want to really do that with them. You want to encourage, you want to reinforce it. And, you know, you want to, again, structure and routine. You want to make those things a priority in the family structure, but in their structure. So devices, phones, activities, these are things that can be earned. Okay. So if your kid is a college kid, it's like, okay, well, did you do X, Y, and Z? Because if not, I'm turning off, you know, you get to have your phone when you do X, Y, and Z. Now, in the perfect world, Lucy, these kids pick these things up and start doing it on your own. Like, you know, my teenager came to me and he was like, oh, I'm feeling some muscle pain around my hip. And I was like, listen, this is because you're gaming too much. And I said, mom's back is hurting her because, you know, she's writing her other book. And this is what I'm doing. Even if it's like 15 minutes, I just run downstairs and I go on the treadmill or something like that. So he was like, oh, okay. And then the next day, my husband at 6:30 in the morning goes, you got to watch this video, right? We have video cameras all over our house. And it was him getting on the treadmill on his own in the middle of the day, nobody around, nobody asked him to. And then, you know, we in our house, we like to have a really good time. We like to have fun and we like to diffuse things. And so then we were like, hey, we saw you on the treadmill, you know, and he just gives us a razz or something. And then the treadmill happened to break. And I was like, I think the treadmill broke because, you know, it couldn't believe that you were on the treadmill, you know. So we like to have fun and try not to, I mean, when you ask when it comes to kids of any age, especially your older kids, your college kids, you want to have conversations with them at a time when they're going to hear you. You want to have a family meeting. You want to talk about these things and let them know. So I am always putting in little sage pieces of advice, like, oh, I'm feeling tired. Okay, well, what would be a good food choice for you right now that would help you get more alert, and my kids just come up with these things on their own because of the shifts in the dialogue, right? Well, you shouldn't eat the Cheetos. Well, in my house, there are no Cheetos. Okay. Number one. So we can provide healthy food choices. So one of the quickest hacks to improving your mental health, particularly due to the gut-brain connection, is to eat an anti-inflammatory diet. And in my book, I dive all into it. I explain it, I break it down what it is. But essentially, there's some components of it that anybody can replicate. And it's that you're having consistent protein. Consistent protein keeps your blood sugar stable. And you're much less likely to have emotional issues like mood issues and anxiety, according to research. And also, you're going to add in healthy fats. And healthy fats and keeping a stable blood sugar is going to help to balance the transmitters and the gut bacteria in the stomach. And again, going to have such a bidirectional influence in this vagus nerve. Your brain is going to work better, right? So these are things that you can support in the home, right? You can control it, whoever's in charge of the eating. And I get my kids super involved in cooking. I think cooking is a life skill, but it's such a self-esteem builder. And kids are more likely to try foods that they made themselves. And you want your kids to eat these nutrient dense foods to really power up their brain. And for us, right, that if you're doing a healthy diet, not a diet, but you're eating a healthy food, an anti-inflammatory, type diet where, you're eating less, hopefully no sugar, but you're eating foods that are really power packing up your brain so that it can be more alert, calmer. It's just going to make a big difference.
And I think that's the piece, certainly from what I've seen throughout all of this, that's the piece that seems to be missing, is that you have to have a healthy brain to have good mental health. You have to have a healthy body to fight whatever virus, whatever
That's right.
comes your way. Meanwhile, we're being, at least in Canada, we've been kept in our homes.
Yeah.
Prevented from going outside, prevented from exercise, prevented from all of these things. And in a society that is chronically deprived of vitamin D.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's, why aren't they shouting from the rooftops? Why are they not giving away vitamins to people? This is the perfect opportunity that our governments have to create healthier people. And what's happening? It's funny to see the memes about, people buying wine, COVID drinking, day drinking, yes. And, the COVID, I think it's now up to the COVID 50 pounds for some people.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, we all see the humor in that because you have to, like you said earlier, you have to laugh.
Right. Or otherwise you're crying.
Yeah. In your wine.
Yeah.
and I sort of look at it and it's this missed opportunity for our governments to create healthier people. And, I just see that as a misstep because now we're going to be dealing with the fallout of COVID. We're going to be dealing with the fallout of mental health.
Yes.
I'm not even sure if it's going to be impacting, the education of our kids. I mean,
of course it's going to impact the education.
I look, yeah. I'm going to say at this point in time, kids are a school year behind.
Right. There's no way. Yeah.
You can't.
It's the Wild West out there educationally. And we just have to expect that our kids are going to have a disjointed education. and that part will be addressed. I mean, listen, here's the reality, Lucy. You don't got your mental health, you don't have anything. It doesn't matter what kind of school you go to, what kind of house you live in, you got a fancy car in the driveway. Nothing matters. You have to feel good about yourself. And this is where we need to put our proactive investment in our kids, because you're right. Right? We don't know the long-term impact, but what we do know is that with ongoing stressors, right, we know what happens to the body. We know what happens to the brain. There's a whole field of study about high stress called psychoimmunology, right? It's the impact of stress on the immune system. And you're right. Why aren't we giving vitamin D out? Why, it's shocking to me to hear in a country with socialized medicine where they want to keep costs down, why wouldn't they hand out vitamin D? It's the hormone regulator of the body. It's a cofactor in a lot of different functions in the body. It requires it. The research shows us that it is a COVID protector. So why aren't we? I mean, these are the things, and that's the basis of all of my work in this 30 years. And that's what I jam pack in to my book, It's Going to Be Okay, which has 40 pages of research citations, because I want people to know there is a ton of evidence behind what is now labeled as integrative. How has food been considered alternative medicine?
Oh, I know. It's kind
of mind-blowing, right?
Baffles. It absolutely baffles me. I had a conversation with my massage therapist. She's an intensive massage therapist. I usually come out with more bruises than I went in with. And we generally talk.
That doesn't sound like self-care, Lucy.
I got a lot of muscle problems in my back. We were talking about, understanding the basic functions of our body. And I said to her one day, I said, can you imagine what our world would look like if starting at, in Canada, we have kindergarten, primary, up until, say, grade 9. Can you imagine if whatever our physical education program is, our health programs are, if that was about basic nutrition, the basic functions of our body, integrating in these meditation, breathing, and yoga? Can you imagine, even if it was 1 hour a week?
Yeah. I mean,
can you imagine
effect?
Like, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, but meanwhile, we will spend millions, billions of dollars on keeping people sick.
Yeah.
But we're not.
I mean, we have a sick care system in the world, right? Yes. It focuses, it's supposed to be called health care. It's supposed to teach you health, but instead it's just focusing on all of these disease states, and people are shocked. Like, when people come to me, Lucy, with their kids, I've helped thousands of people reduce some of the most chronic conditions. And I wish I got people when they had the early rumblings of anxiety, but, it takes 11 years, according to research, from the onset of a problem before somebody gets appropriate mental health help. And I'm going to tell you, when I see people, oh, that is normal. I mean, getting people, I had a 20-year-old a couple of weeks ago. She's had problems right out of the gate. Okay. So here she is, 20 years old. She's had literally 20 years of problems. And and what happens? They've tried every psychiatric med. Nothing works. They get to me and they're like, how could it be that nutrition, exercise, neurofeedback, very specific type of psychotherapy I was recommending, how could it be these things work so well and we haven't heard of them? Right? And I'm like, listen, here's the reality. We're not training providers. We're not training medical providers. Most physicians do not have one course in nutrition, not one. So they're advising us, and they're not teaching people about these things. That's why I literally have done hundreds of appearances and podcasts and things like that, because you need to know, and you need to know there's science backing it. And, there's a lot of reasons why, and that's not the only reason, but people need to be, I always talk about people becoming the CEO of their own healthcare. And once they realize they're in charge, okay, if I'm like, hey, you're in charge, not your doctor, not your psychiatrist, not your therapist, you're in charge. Oh, that shifts it around. And you need to know there are many, many things that you can do that are, their lifestyle change involved. But once you get into some of these things, it's actually not a burden, it's a joy. You feel differently, and people have to give up the magic wand, that there's a magic pill, there's something that's going to fix it. And I think that's what people are struggling with most right now. Like, you're essentially jailed right now, are you not allowed to leave your house, Lucy? You're really not. Are you allowed to go in
well, we just, where we are, like, as I said before we got on, where my kids are in Ontario, they're pretty much on like, they may as well be in prison.
Right.
I think where I am in Nova Scotia, we're moving towards that. Not that we have that many cases compared to the rest of the country, but just because Nova Scotia has the ability to close things off so tightly, because we're not an island, but there's only one way to drive in, so it's easier to.
So my girlfriend, one of my best girlfriends in New Zealand, and they've had like only 10 cases. That place is shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, shut down. You cannot get in there. You have to do 2 weeks.
And we have to do that too.
Right.
Only this province, every time we leave Nova Scotia, if we leave the province, when we come back, we have to self-isolate for 14 days.
Oh, no, this isn't self-isolation. This is mandatory 2 week in a facility.
Oh, okay. Well,
you are not allowed to bring your own food, nothing.
Well, I think Canada,
they're really serious. People are doing, every country is doing something.
Yeah, Canada has something like that.
Canada has a 2 or 3 day at a special hotel.
It's 2 or 3 days, depending on when you get your test, but then you still have to go back home and isolate.
Quarantine. Right.
But I mean, I've heard horror stories coming about these so-called COVID. I mean, hotels, they're going to cause another whole problem.
Oh yeah. They're very traumatic, especially when people were early on and they were caught in places and they had to come back in, and, your rights are taken away from you. And there's a lot of things going on in the world. Like, I understand why people are, really having a hard time. It's just that you become stress inoculated, Lucy, when you take care of yourself and your nervous system knows how to get into this relaxed parasympathetic state, and you keep oiling it. You keep doing that breath work. You do a little biofeedback, do some gratitude journaling. You say positive statements out loud. Oh, I can't wait I'm so grateful that I'm healthy. I'm going to be healthy all season. You make these statements, your brain hears you, your body relaxes, and you just don't react to stress in the same way. And I really am a walking example of that. People tell me all the time, I'm in the middle of a summit, a program, and a book launch. And
you're easy peasy. You're just,
I'm like,
yeah.
And something goes down, I'm like, all right, what are you going to do now? I mean, that doesn't mean I never get agitated. If you're really rude, oh yeah, then that it's on. I don't like that,
That's when the New Yorker comes out, right?
Oh, well, it's just me. It's the Italian in me. Go out of your way to be nice. Don't go out of your way to be rude, people.
Yeah.
And plus I truly have a lot of gratitude in my heart. I have a gratitude for even the hell I've gone through with my own kid, because it brought so many great things into our life. I would never want that for him or another family, but I took away a lot of pearls, right? And I had the blessing that a lot of people left my life, because when you have a child with mental health issues, they run. They think it's a contagion. And when they run, guess what? The people that are there are the best people ever. And so it gives you a lot of clarity in who should be in your life and in the way that you live your life and the way that you lead in general, you know what I mean? So I always go out of my way to be nice to people and go and say nice things. And you just never know where somebody's at. And when you do nice things for other people, my gosh, the ripple effect of that is pretty awesome. So, when you have gratitude in your heart, there is no room for fear. And so it's a wonderful way to help alleviate stress. And it's a practice that needs to be cultivated. And that's the other thing. We think we punch in for a massage or we do some meditation, you're all set. No, you have to continue the practice, right? I do things 7 days a week, typically multiple things in a day. Sometimes it's just 1 minute of, 1 to 2 minutes of breathing. Sometimes it's an hour of something else, but I make sure that I'm doing something every day to protect my nervous system, because we all should do that. And nobody is immune from stress, and stress can be good or bad, Lucy. Your body knows no difference. Once it's overloaded, it's overloaded,
Dr. Roseann, you have so much information to share with people. We can't pack it all into one episode. So where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, drroseann.com. So it's drroseann.com. And you can buy my book. It's Gonna Be Okay on Amazon. And if you click to the website, there will be a button where you can, when you buy the book, and you can get it on pre-sale, or after you buy the book, you're going to get a whole bunch of freemiums by clicking on the button and showing your receipt to get it. So I'm trying to give as much away to people because these are hard times. But you can follow me anywhere as Dr. Roseann, including TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. I'm Dr. Roseann Capanna-Hodge on on Facebook, because somebody already took that. I was late to the social world.
Oh, darn.
But, and I put out information every day that's just good stuff for you to take control of your own mental health and your mental health for your kids. There's nothing more important than your mental health, really, honestly. And this pandemic, silver lining, is opening up a dialogue about mental health. People are really, really being very forward. And I think we all need to go an extra mile and check in on your neighbors, say good things, connect in any way that you can, and get moving and eat as many positive things, as many healthy foods with power packed with nutrients as you can, and you'll get through it.
That is excellent advice. Thank you so much, Dr. Roseann. If you are looking at connecting with Dr. Roseann, I will have all of her links in the show notes. Be sure to check it out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creator.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Roller coaster.